Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain. Once again, joined by Coach Kenny Simpson. Coach, off-season, things are looking great. I know that we're getting to that weird point where there's all these sports and all this stuff going on, and the kids are everywhere. I just scheduled my first JV baseball game. To go visit and watch kids, because you got to do something to get back in these kids' graces, right? They haven't seen you since football season ended. It's been super weird not being around my guys. So me and another assistant coach decided we're going to a JV baseball game, which may be the worst thing I ever go to. I don't know.
No, man, it'd be fun.
Baseball is already slow in high school, and then you take it down a notch. So it's either going to be a home run derby or the pitching's going to look great, and I don't know which way it's going to be.
Yeah, it'd be fun, man. That's what we called it perfect Wednesday. We had the perfect storm this Wednesday. We had basketball just got knocked out, which I like for them to go as far as they can go, but we do like to get them back when we get them. So we had all the basketball guys back. We had, every team's got those. I call them Clark Kent and Superman, like those two kids that are never there at the same time. You got the world will collide if both of them actually show up at school the same day. Those two kids were there today. Basketball kids were there today. We had 65 kids in the weight room, man, and pump up the music, and it was just a real energetic time.
Those are the days. Those are the days you need to record your lift so you can pitch it to the school board. We got to have another gym.
I did a 15-second video, put it on Twitter. I'm sure I'm going to hear about it. We let our kids not wear shirts. I'm sure I'm going to hear these idiots get on there and talk whatever. But those are the days, because now I know what's coming. We have a soccer game tomorrow. We got baseball games coming up. You're not going to have all 65 kids together again probably until the end of the summer.
Don't tell your administration.
Right.
That, just it's a selling point to get a better gym always.
Well, we actually, and then perfect Wednesday for us, because this is the first time in my life I've talked to the basketball coach who's going to give me the kids 5 days a week to spring break and bring his basketball kids over to lift with us. Good night. That's my favorite basketball coach I've ever met in my entire life.
No doubt.
This guy is now my best friend, and I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty good. Well, we don't want to leave our guest on the fringes for too long here. We are joined tonight by Coach Logan Spain out of Illinois. Bumped into Coach Spain over at the Gun Tea Clinic, at the National Clinic, the big one, there in Southside, Arkansas. And obviously the social on Friday night, and which, by the way, if you're a Gun Tea member and you're not going to that, you're really missing out, because it was a lot of fun just to catch up. Maybe you take your own beverages. I don't know. The river will get you if you aren't careful, not necessarily in the alcohol, but the price. But, man, it's a great time to get to hang out. But Coach Spain, man, we're super glad you could join us. I forgot to give you this little brief, so I'm just going to tell you now. We're just going to have you introduce yourself and kind of your lineage in football and how you got where you are. And we're going to ask you to keep it under, a minute, because I've had some guys.
Oh man, under a minute. That's going to be tough. Well, yeah, first of all, appreciate you guys having me on. Good seeing you guys again. Like you said, this is my second year going down to the National Clinic, and got to meet you this year as well, Daniel. And like you said, I got to hang out and get to know each other. So I'm from a small town in Southern Illinois, DuQuoin, Illinois, born and raised here. It's a football community, definitely proud. Brings the entire community together, brings the entire school together. It's something that growing up as a kid here was really special. A lot of success, a lot of tradition, and growing up, Alabama reference. There's Bear Bryant, and there's Nick Saban, but when you were growing up in DuQuoin, there's Bob Carnes and Al Martin. These are just legendary guys as a kid growing up here, wanting to be a football player. And I was blessed to be able to play for Coach Martin here during my high school career, and then started college and pretty well knew I wanted to go the education coaching route. And Coach Martin's last year as head coach, I asked him if I could come on and just come learn. I didn't ask to coach because I had no clue how to coach. And they had a coaching staff that had been there together for 30 years. So I just wanted to, which we'll get into that a little bit more later. Just wanted to come in and learn from those guys. Someone that he was a senior when I was a freshman, was going to take over as head coach the following year. We were actually next door neighbors in college for a little bit. Somebody who's become a really good friend of mine and has given me a lot of opportunities to get to where I'm at in the coaching world. So then he takes over. His name's AJ Hill. He takes over in year 2 as the head coach, and he's there for 4 years. And as I said, he gave me my first real opportunity to coach. I never played a down offense in my life. I didn't really know. I think I only kind of had one skill in high school, and that was run and hit. Outside of that, there wasn't much skill to me. But our receivers coach was leaving. He had taken a job up north, and AJ just asked if I wanted to do it. And I said, well, we'll figure it out. So just kind of a little bit of responsibility at a time, starting out as receiver coach, then JV defensive coordinator, JV head coach. So got some really good experience there while still learning from those guys. Like I said, like Coach Martin stayed on and coached freshman offensive line. Like that tells you how humble of a guy. We're talking about a legendary.
This is the head coach?
He was the head coach for 25 years, multiple state championships, and just wanted to stay and give back. Which is just amazing. That goes to talk to his character. He just wanted to help. And again, which I know I'm going way over my minute here. I apologize.
That's okay.
I get giddy when I talk about my DuPont history.
It's absolutely okay.
And kind of I tell people really my Mount Rushmore of coaches is all on that one high school coaching staff. Coach Martin, Coach Shaw, Coach Ellis, Coach Gross. Those are 4 guys that were there for 30 years together. That any one of those guys could have been a head coach, but they were in it together. There was no ego. There was a lot of humbleness and just a group of guys working together, doing what's best for the program and for the kids. So then my buddy AJ left. His wife was leaving to go to school to be a doctor. So her school kind of took her away. And at that point, I kind of decided that I thought I wanted to be a head coach. And I decided I wanted to kind of go that route, not knowing that at the time I knew absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. Young guy. I'm still young, 29, but I was 24, 25 years old. Had more of an ego than I should have. Thought I knew a lot more than I did, and was just ready to take any head coaching job that I can get. So actually our cross county rivals, their head coach was retiring. And so I went over there to be their defensive coordinator for a year before taking over as head coach. And just a little bit, I guess, to set the scene, the year that I go over as defensive coordinator, and great community, love the community. I wouldn't necessarily say there's the same level of support and importance. But get over there and we have 23 kids in our program, 0 seniors, 4 juniors. So we don't play a varsity schedule my first year over there, understandably so, not safe. The following year, I take over as head coach, again, thinking we're going to set the world on fire when we didn't even play a varsity schedule the year before. This was going on during COVID. We got the numbers up a little bit. I think we were around 52, 53. Had some momentum going into the season, some big energy. And the Tuesday before our first game, positive COVID test, boom, they shut us down for 2 weeks. So first 2 coaching games in my career were forfeit losses. And then the next 7 were earned losses. And so my first season was 0-9. A lot of those 7 losses on the field were 40 clocks. Um, people talk about humble pie, and I'll tell you, I was eating an entire humble pie every week, and it was the absolute best thing that could have happened to me. Because again, I was a young guy that thought I knew a lot more than I did, and at that point, there was 2 choices. Like, I could continue to go down this road and act like I knew a lot more than I did, or I could come to the realization that I didn't know anything and I had everything to learn. And I chose option number 2, and just really opened my mind, opened my heart, again, humbled me, and actually ended up taking a position. I did my student teaching at a small town called Cesar-Valier, and I decided to take an assistant coaching position with them. It's a unique situation. They had co-head coaches, and both of them had a few years left till they retired. So they were kind of going to groom me for that position. At that point, I knew that I wanted to wait a few years to be a head coach again. Go in, learn from, again, 2 guys that are great coaches. Both John Shadowins was the head coach there for a long time, over 100 wins. And Coach Mike Root is another legendary Hall of Famer in Southern Illinois. Al Martin, my head coach, has the most wins in Southern Illinois history. Mike Root has the second most wins. So just getting to, again, take a step back and learn. And then fast forward a year, and my alma mater, DuQuoin, they ended up having a coaching opening, and it was something that I still didn't really feel like. Again, this is a year removed for me leaving a position as a head coach, really wanting to sit back and learn. And this position was open, and kind of, again, hometown, dream job. I was like, man, this is kind of an exciting potential. And thought about it, and really just prayed on it a lot, and just was really tugging back and forth. I was very happy at Cesar where I was. The people there treated me great. I love my teaching position. I love my coaching position. And I had kind of thought I was just going to stay at Cesar. And then 2 days before the position closed, I thought, you know what? This is my dream job. There's no telling when or if this is going to come open again. So what the heck? I'll throw my name in the hat. I'll apply for it, and then get an interview. And obviously, I'm in the position that I am now. I end up getting hired as the head coach at DuQuoin, and full circle, the first thing I do, so get hired that night at the school board meeting. The next morning, first thing I do is I drive out to my old head coach's house, Coach Martin. And this is a guy, again, humble. Like, if you sat at a wedding reception with him, you'd leave that night and have no clue that he even was a football coach. Like, he wouldn't even discuss football with you unless you brought it up. And I just asked him for his advice, and he said 3 things. He said patience, discipline, and most importantly, love. Now, probably one of my biggest weaknesses is patience. I'm not a patient person, but discipline and love, I was like, okay, that's something I can really get on board with. And that's what we've built our team on. That's what we built our culture on. We talk about, we say it in the parent meeting, 2 things promise we're going to do is we're going to discipline your kid. We're going to love your kid. Try to tell the boys at least once every day, I'm proud of you. I believe in you. I love you. And I mean it, and we mean it. And it was just really an awesome, which we'll get into kind of our core values here in a little bit, I'm sure too. But man, when you build a football program and a culture and a foundation on discipline and love, it's amazing what happens. And we had a tremendous amount of success this year. We went 10-1, and I believe I think the formula to really have success is you've got to have a really good culture, and then not what all coaches will admit, but you've got to have really good talent.
Yeah, I was saying you got to have a good quarterback.
You got to have good talent, and we were blessed with both. We had a
Good.
tremendous amount of talent, and we had amazing culture. And it was really fun to show up every day, and the kids felt the love, we felt the love, and discipline. I mean, there was a lot of discipline and making sure that we're doing things the right way. But definitely a good first year, and being on both sides of the extreme, going 0-9 and 10-1, is something that it's pretty neat seeing both sides of it.
So I really wasn't worried about you going over a minute because our very first question tonight was going to be, how'd you get the job? And so you just answered, your introduction went right in for, and also,
Yeah,
if you haven't figured it out by now, and by reading the subject line, this is all about preparing yourself for that first job,
yeah,
or maybe the first time back as a head coach. Really, I more planned it around the first time you're a head coach,
yeah,
and we were joking ahead of time about you having an 0-9 and then a 10-1 season. You got
yeah,
both extremes, and so it does a lot of times prove that it. And Kenny said this on the podcast before: going 10-1 doesn't make you the best coach in Illinois.
absolutely.
Going an 0-9 did not make you the worst coach in Illinois,
Yep,
right? It's not a direct reflection of your ability to coach football.
absolutely.
Sometimes you just are outmanned 9 times straight, right? Well,
Yeah,
and you talked about 2 losses were COVID, so sometimes it happens. One other thing I'll talk about, you said you kind of thought you knew it all, and then maybe not, and that
yeah,
they talk about the Dunning Kruger effect. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. But essentially, when you're new into an industry, a topic, a hobby, whatever it is, you usually take that very first piece of advice you get, and that is the golden ticket. And that is the
yeah,
only thing you ever need to know. And that happens in football, right? So we are members of a team that runs zone, and zone's all you ever need. And you don't need anything else. And why would anybody else waste their time with anything but zone?
yeah,
Because that's what we're going to do. That's that first mountain, and you're standing on the mountain in this Dunning Kruger effect. You look up the image; it's pretty funny, and then you fall into the pit of despair
yeah,
because you fall off that cliff and realize, insert whatever your topic is. We're using football because that's what we're talking about, but it doesn't matter what you do. You quickly find out that it is so much deeper,
yeah,
and you don't have a clue. You know one very small way to do it, and there's so much more to learn. And then you start that trek up the real hill, right? And you got to go learn the real stuff and learn football. So we've all been there, and if we say we haven't, we're lying to ourselves and to everyone around hearing us, because Dunning Kruger's real. It's scientifically proven thing. It happens to everyone in every hobby they ever try to pick up, and it doesn't change for football coaches.
yeah,
You come in and you think you've got the answers, and then you go, holy crap. Uh, because it doesn't matter what your introduction is; it's the way you do things, and then you just have to realize that there's so much more out there. So
absolutely.
you kind of lived it, and maybe you never even heard of it, but you've already went
Yeah,
through it. Now you're climbing back up that mountain.
yeah. One step
Um,
at a time.
yeah. So, and we just continue learning, and I think that's one of the big keys. So,
Absolutely.
so kudos to you for sticking with it, man, and taking that risk the second time, because it's not for everybody, right? Even
No.
being a position coach or coordinator, it's not for, you're going to get absolutely roasted sometimes. I
Yeah.
have been a DB coach, and my guys couldn't cover. We're a cover 3 team, and they got beaten. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? It makes me look like the worst coach ever. Um, and if you can't just let the water roll off your back, it's going to
Yeah.
eat you up and spit you out. So kudos to
Absolutely.
you.
Appreciate it.
Yep. Um, so we'll kind of push through that first question of how you get the job, because obviously you just told us. So,
You want to do your ads here real quick, Daniel?
yeah. Let's do the ads. It's good. Thank you very much, Kenny. I almost
Yeah.
forgot. So, Kenny, why don't you tell us how we can simplify football for our staff and our team? What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. The longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. We're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for your that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, right? And it always comes down to big school, small school, right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise, okay? 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you.
Coach, do you want to communicate like a pro and experience the best sideline communication system on the market? Then let me introduce you to Procom headsets. Procom is the most clear, durable, and reliable system on the market. From our noise-canceling technology to our coach-to-player communications featuring our patented loudmouth, Procom defeats the competition. Thousands of coaches have made the switch because they have seen, heard, and felt the difference. Let me show you how Procom headsets will make your game day communications a seamless and efficient process. Go to procomwelchman.com and reach out to me. That's PROCOMWELCHMAN.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors FBCoachSimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors OffensiveCoordinatorAcademy.com, all things offense, and DefensiveCoordinatorAcademy.com, all things defense.
This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com. All right. Appreciate that, Coach. All wonderful stuff there. If you have not met Zach Welchman, you need to make that check that email, reach out to him, learn about what he's doing with Procom and how he can help out your team. Big things coming. And Ace Sports, get a hold of Mark or Ryan, whatever region you're in. Those guys at Ace Sport. Look, it is a free fundraiser. You do nothing. They help you get it all set. I'll say absolutely nothing, but they help you get everything set up. Now you got this beautiful video board, and you've not done all the footwork. They're going to set you up to help you get to break even. So get a hold of Mark. Ryan, if you're in Oklahoma, it'll be Ryan instead of Mark, and reach out to Coach Welchman. Back to the questions here. Coach and Kenny, I know you've not had a lot to say to this, so I know that you've done your first year, and then you've moved to bigger schools, and you've moved back. So I'm sure that some of this affects you as well. But Logan, what was that first thing, or what all did you find out like you really didn't know? You talked about I thought I was ready, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
So kind of, can you walk me through what that looked like when it hit you the first time? Like, oh, I don't have an answer here.
Yeah. I think the first time that it really hit me, we were playing a team, and I think we were down about 60-0 at halftime. And nothing really punches you in the gut quite like that. And that was the first time I really thought, man, I might have bitten off more than I can chew here.
Was it 49-0? It was that 60.
Right. No, I'm going to be honest with you. I think it might even been 61. So it wasn't That was my first feeling of, I just felt helpless. Like I didn't have an answer. I didn't know how to help put these kids in the best position to succeed. Um, so that's, again, you start reflecting, which you hate to do that in the middle of a season. The hope is you can wait till the season's over to start reflecting. And I mean, obviously every week you kind of analyze things and see what you can change. Um, but obviously there's a million schemes out there that work. So other than that, like you mentioned before, especially a lot of guys going in their first year as a head coach, they think there's only one way to do things and one way to run things, and you should only do zone until you meet Kenny Simpson. Then he's going to convince you to go over to gap, which is what happened here. But outside of schematically, really culturally, I was kind of, I guess, just an old school guy. Like you show up and you play football, and you don't really need to do that other stuff. And I'll say, which I know this is kind of venturing further, but I'll say that's definitely was the difference in us this season, was our culture and our core values and what we preach and what we talk about every single day. And I think culture is a word that gets thrown around a lot, especially these last 5 years or so. And it's a pretty word. So you really have to be able to define it for you and your program. Like, it can't just be an umbrella catch-all. So we did that, and we've got our 5 core values, and our number one is best as the standard. And that pretty well, there's no gray area there. I mean, best, that's number one. And that does, again, before it was all wins and losses, that doesn't mean best like we're going to be the best team in the state. Now, is our goal to be the best team in Southern Illinois? Absolutely. But it's the best in everything you do. It's the best at practice. It's the best at school. It's the best out in the community, giving your best effort in everything you do. And if not, it's not up to our standards. And man, that just spread like wildfire. Like, we had kids, we had coaches, kids, some teachers. Like, our kids were getting called out. If it wasn't the best, it's, hey, best is a standard. That's not our standard. And man, it just really, again, there's no gray area there. It's black and white. Best. Did you give your best? No. Okay, that's not up to our standards. Let's get it next time. And so just real quick, I'll go through our core values. And I highly recommend that everyone does their own, whatever that is. But number one is best as a standard. Number 2 is elite commitment. Number 3 is relentless ambition. Number 4, optimistic mindset. And number 5, brotherhood, which we tag a definition, and brotherhood is love one another. And we even, we live in the social media world. So our hashtag is brick by brick. And that's really, again, I know I'm kind of further in the question that you had, but an answer, because as coaches, we're problem solvers. We're looking for solutions to our problems. And we didn't have a culture at my first job, and that falls directly on me because I didn't define what our culture was and what it needed to be. And I didn't hold our kids to standards because we didn't have standards, because I didn't create them. So I'd say that's really the biggest is you've got to be able to define that, and you've got to have your coaching staff and your leaders and everybody bought into your core values.
Kenny, I know yours has been, 1 or 2 years ago that was your first head coaching job, but how much did yours align to what he just said? Was it X's and O's? Was it culture? Was it working with other people? What was your big thing that you fell off the cliff?
Yeah, I mean, you change a lot as you get older, and then you can remember back, and then I love hearing coach talk. I love hearing young coaches that are humble and want to get better. And a lot of times you know kind of what you are, and coach clearly does, but it's hard to define some things until you get far enough removed where you look back at them and go, well, man, no wonder that was tough. And so I wrote down a couple of things coach said on his first answer that we did before the break here. The one that you talked about, the older coach told him patience. and love and discipline. And I agree 100% with what Coach told you. But like I've learned that one of those three really only comes with age. Like you can discipline yourself at a young age, you can teach yourself to love and be passionate. Man, I don't know if you get patience until you get older. I really
Yeah.
don't. And I really don't know, like, if you want to hire a guy who's a really patient person at a
Right.
young age, because I think that's something you earn and you learn and you go through. Like, I'm still not patient, but I'm a lot more patient because now I've been on the back end where I've seen, now I've got kids that I coach that are dads and, and they're married. And so now I can see the finished product. But until you can really see the finished product, you don't really know what the whole picture looks like, if that makes sense. And
No.
so that's, I think, where a lot of times younger coaches struggle with patience is when I was young and I was full of everything, my kids weren't that age. And so I didn't quite see them as other people's kids. I saw them as my players and here's how they should behave. And so I think patience is one of the things you'll gain. I just want to kind of throw a little caveat in. I love the
Yep.
first answer. And then the second answer, Coach did a great job with that too. Here's the ones I wrote down for me, Daniel. So these are the 5 things that, like, my first year as a coach that I had struggled with mightily. And mine are a little more practical than coaches probably are, just because I've had more time to sit down and think about them.
Yeah.
One, I was horrible with coaches. Like I was pretty good with players. That's how you get those jobs. Like you get a job because you're really good at motivating players, or you're doing a good part of your job. Generally, you get a head coaching job because you're good at being around kids. And when you become a head coach, now most of my time is spent around adults. Those are not the same skill set, and sometimes it's very uncomfortable. Logan here's 29, has a full head of hair. One day he's going to look like me. It's easy for me now to walk in a room of young coaches and critique them. Like, I don't like doing that, but it's easy because I could be some of their dads. Like I'm the age now where that's okay. That's really hard to do if you're 29 and a guy's been coaching for 20 years. How does that conversation go? And I was terrible with that. Like I was really bad with that. So if you're in here going to be a head coach, you better figure out your plan of action for that, because that's tough. I think that's the number one thing that most young head coaches struggle with is not controlling the kids. It's controlling the staff, because you either work by yourself and don't tell the staff what you need help with and then you do it all, or you don't teach them what you expect and they don't meet the standard and you don't address it. Those are the 2 big issues that I ran into.
Yep.
Second thing that I learned was discipline is way greater than motivation. Like a lot of times you think as a young coach, I'm going to go in and love these kids so much they'll play hard for me. And part of that is true. And playing hard is important. It is important that your kids love you and they want to play hard for you. I'm not negating that. I'm saying that discipline beats that every day of the week and then some. And discipline is, can your kids do hard things when they have to do it? Can they execute fundamentals of the game when they have to do it at the hardest times? That isn't necessarily something you can just do a motivational speech and get across. That's a daily thing. You're in the military, Daniel, so you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's one thing to get motivated to go storm the beaches of Normandy. It's another one to go on a 6-week campaign where you have to get up every single day and be disciplined. And I think I learned real quickly that my teams would come out like their hair was on fire. But if things went south, we didn't really know how to deal with that. And so that was a big issue I had as a young coach. The third thing I put down here is it took me a while to realize that the other coaches got paid too. Like I just assumed I was smarter than everybody else. I worked harder, at least in my own mind, and I had studied harder, at least in my own mind, than the other guy had. So therefore, I deserve to win. That's not how this world works. It doesn't work that way. You might be smarter than that guy, but he's got 5 D1 kids. Or you might be dumber than that guy, but your kids are a little better than his kids. Or sometimes the official threw a flag at the right time that helped you win. Or sometimes you were smart, but that guy's been around for 40 years and he's seen what you're doing and he's 3 steps ahead of you. So that was tough for me to kind of humble myself. And it sounds like Logan learned that lesson pretty quickly from hearing his 0-9 deal, where you learn that crap, these other guys are paid too, and I better kind of have something to bring to the table in this world. The fourth one I got down here was being a head coach is lonely. Like, you go from being the guy around the table everyone wants to talk to being there's a different kind of conversation. Even your friends, different conversation there, and that can be a really hard reality for a lot of coaches. Is that relationship changes, and it just is what it is. I'm not saying you can't be friends with your assistant coaches, but it's different when you're the head coach as to when you're an assistant coach. And that's a tough world to be in, because who do you go to with your problems? Like, you really don't need to be going to your assistant coaches with your problems. Like, you can go to them if it's a team thing, we're going to work together, but you need somewhere else to go. So you need a support system. The last thing I put down here was you learn real quickly when you're a head coach that before you're a head coach, scheme is like 99% of your job. Like 99% of what you do is creative ways, have good practices and new plays and new blitzes and all that stuff. And so you're just consumed with it. And I still am, obviously. I run the gun team. But when you become a head coach, scheme is about 10% of your job. It really is. 90% of it is the stuff Logan's been talking about. Creating a culture, loving your players, putting out fires daily. This is a perfect Wednesday. I talked about at the beginning of the podcast. Perfect Wednesday. I still had to deal with 3 different issues. Kid had ISS. Kid decided he didn't want to play football anymore. And I had another one. Well, when you're a young coach, those issues seem huge. They just seem huge, and they ruin your day. As you get older and you're used to dealing with it, you kind of are able to kind of handle it better. But I know the first time I was a head coach, it felt like every decision you had to be perfect at. And you're making 30 decisions a day. And it's really hard to be that way. And so that's tough, is when you start looking at scheme is not as important. I got to be better at these other kind of things. I got to be able to compartmentalize my emotions from being frustrated with this kid for quitting and walk out and have a good workout with these other kids. How are you going to deal with that kind of stuff? So those are things that I learned as I've gotten older. Still not great at them, but better.
Yeah, I think a lot of those, that you talked about scheme, 90% of your job as an assistant or a coordinator, and those problem solvings. Logan, you said you were 60 at nothing at halftime. Like, obviously, you didn't have answers, right? They were presenting a problem you couldn't solve, and that is a lot. I think that's, as bad as I hate to admit it, people need more coordinator time, right? I'm in my 4th year and I'm applying for head coach jobs because I bring a different experience, right? I bring the military side, and like, my hope is that's going to help me deal with adults because I've done that, right? And that was even one of my interview answers was like, how are you going to do this job? You've never done it. Well, I have. I just did it in a different uniform.
Yeah.
So, I think you really need that coordinator time to get those answers so that you can help that coordinator who's struggling on Friday night that can't stop whatever it is. Kenny's buck sweep, in his backside RPO. I can't stop it, coach. Well, here, let's try some things that I've used before.
If you figure it out, don't tell anybody. So
I don't know that there is any figuring it out. What are you talking about? It's the common answer, right? Just it's flavor of the week defense. That's how you win those games. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I think it's super cool that you guys, you've at least realized these are the really hard things. And I hope this episode helps guys that are going to go into their first year and go, all right, yes, I have a playbook drawn up on Canva. I'm ready to take it and show it off to the world. It looks great. I got all the perfect colors. My logo's great. Kenny, you nailed it. Like, what do you do when a kid quits? What are you doing with your star player? What do you do when the kid that's supposed to go D1 can't keep his grades up and you're losing?
Well, I get through hundreds of issues. I know there's not what this podcast won't go long, but here's a couple of samplings. Your best player is selfish and he has to touch the ball. You got to figure out how to deal with that. Your best player doesn't want to block. Your best player needs to play quarterback, but he scored a 9 on his ACT. Okay, your best player is going to play AAU basketball and miss the summer. And those are just random ones that I'm probably dealing with all the time. You got to have an answer for that. And there's not a guidebook, because all the
Right.
young coaches want to tell you, and I'm not picking on Logan here. I'm not saying he would say this, but all the Twitter gurus and everybody else will say, "Well, just kick them off, and we're going to create." Okay, so now your four best players aren't playing. You're going to go
Yep.
0-10 and get fired. Like that's not
Yep.
a good answer. What's a real answer in that, and how do you find a middle ground, and how do you slowly create culture? Because everyone wants to come in and say, "Well, our best players work the hardest." Yeah, those are fun years. Like you're going to be really good those years, but those aren't all the time. So how are you creating that? What is your system in place to catch the ninth grade kid who hates the weight room? He'd rather go play basketball. He's lazy. He's soft, but he's by far your best player. What are you doing culturally to help him by the time he's a senior be a leader? And like, you can't just say we have this program. Bullcrap, programs don't work. Like, what are you really doing to help that kid? Are you putting him with a mentor? And what specific kid is he going with? Are you checking in with him? What life lessons are you? There's a lot of those things you got to go through. I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but that
Coach, I love
that's
it. We
one
lit the
issue.
fuse, and I am absolutely
Well,
loving
that's
it.
one
Go ahead,
issue.
Tony.
Absolutely.
You
You
want
know what I'm saying? Like that's one small part of being a head coach. Let's throw on that guy's dad's a douche. Okay, so now you just added fuel to the fire, and then his dad's also the principal. Boom. What are you doing in that situation? Because
Yep.
you're 29, here you go. And this is what you want as a head coach. Welcome to it. And that's kind of
Yep.
what a lot of these coaches get thrown into. Well, there's no like playbook for that. So who do you go talk to get advice? And what do you do when you know you did the wrong thing? Like, well, that didn't work. Crap, now what do I do? So there's all those issues you got to deal with. And so I'm glad to have Logan on here. I want to get more of his opinion because I'm an old coach that can tell you all this stuff. But I like the fresh perspective of him and you, Daniel, because you guys are the future,
absolutely.
I love it. I
Uh,
love soaking it up. I'm obviously a clinic guy. I love watching podcasts and videos. So I'm just, for a second, I even forgot that I was even on the
Oh,
podcast.
sorry.
I just thought I was, I
just
love it.
watching Daniel and
I
Kenny do
love
a
it.
thing.
Yes. Thank you for the
You,
advice. And
you
like
get
you
me.
said, I mean,
You got Kenny
there's the
unplugged.
day.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, I'm glad you did, and I'm sure everybody that's going to watch this needs to hear all that because that's what it is, and you don't realize how much um, outside drama that you have to deal with until you're in this seat. And like you said, it's daily, it's every single day, and how are you going to deal with that? And I promise you, as a 29-year-old, I don't have all the answers, and I try to learn. And you mentioned, I think it's really important to have guys that you can rely on. I'm very blessed that in Southern Illinois, I've got a handful of coaches that I can reach out to and I ask their advice on things. And again, multiple guys from my own town that coached here for a long time and know this specific community that I can lean on for advice. But there's no book out there on how to deal with it, and everything's different. And I'll say, for the young guy, definitely, and you mentioned it, not reacting on emotions. That's something that got me in trouble a lot early on in my career. There wasn't a battle that I was going to back down from. Like, controversy did not scare me off at all. Like, I was hitting that head on. Now it's like, let's pick our battles. Let's be smart about what we're going to battle for.
You'll also, I don't know if you're married yet, not, but that will also help in that arena when that comes.
Absolutely engaged. Actually, wedding's here in a couple weeks. So
Remember
definitely,
what you just said. Remember that.
Yep. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that's one, I know earlier I mentioned have an open mind. Again, not just in scheme, but when talking to people, I think when you're in this seat, you've truly got to be able to see things from the other person's perspective. Even if you disagree, you've got to completely hear them out, put yourself in their shoes, and then you got to make a decision. Leadership's leadership. It doesn't matter if you're in the military, if you're a head football coach, if you're a business owner. When you're in leadership, it's your job to hear people all the way through and then make a decision and go with it. And Coach Simpson, I know, obviously you've been a head coach for a long time. When you do that, Group A is going to be happy and Group B is going to be mad. So it doesn't matter. You're making somebody upset. Just hear everybody out and then make the decision that you think's best. And that's just in the day to day. I mean, that's, again, there's no magic wand, but that's just my day to day. When, like you mentioned, I'm going to go to school tomorrow and there's something that's going to pop up. And it's important just don't react on emotions, because that's the very first, I don't know about you guys, but the very first thing I do is I just get infuriated. And before that just came out, stop, think things through, see it from the other person's side, talk to people you trust, and then go from there.
I love it because, look, I have not been a head coach yet, but I am like on the other side of 35, and I'm not too far removed from a lot of those things, just being furious at people for the sake, just. And now I'm like, you're not really worth my time. Like, I'm not going to ruin my day for your problem. It's just not worth it right now.
Absolutely.
Coach, so now we've talked about you went 0-9. You got a 10-1 season. You've seen both sides of the spectrum. We have that understanding of I like the word dichotomy of how to handle things. And the world is not black and white. We have to live in the gray.
Yeah.
But now that you've seen both sides, what are you doing going forward? How are you going to make next year your best year, if you will, whether it be in your record or just reaching your ceiling? I'm real big on your ceiling may not be 10-1 next year. It might be 4 losses, right? But what are you doing to make sure you hit that ceiling and not falling into I'm the best coach ever, I went 10-1?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think what will always help me personally is that I went through that 0-9 season. My first season, I just got humbled, and I always go back to that. So I don't foresee myself falling in that trap. I know some people do. But just having a growth mindset. Again, I just learned not too long ago that I don't know anything. So now I'm really just a student of learning, not just the game schematically, but again, culture. I love listening to people in leadership. Our guy who's our defensive coordinator now is one of those coaches that I mentioned before that was here for 30 years. And he's a guy that's coached for over 30 years. And we don't have a coach on staff that's trying harder to learn than him. And it's like, what a great example. This guy's been doing it for over 30 years and he's still studying like a GA in college. I mean, it's awesome. It's a great example. So not only learning, but again, leaning back to, I was blessed to see how things are done at a very high level. To me, the most important thing that you can have as a head coach is a really good coaching staff. Football is too big of a game. There's too many moving parts. Again, not just schematically, but everything that goes on to just have one or two guys. Like, you've got to be able to build a staff. You've got to invest in your staff, giving them resources. COVID obviously was a unique time, and not everybody's favorite by far, but something in the coaching world that came really good out of it is there's so many resources out there. There's so many. Like, it doesn't matter if it's Glacier Drive, Coach Simpson's Gun Tee. I mean, I could go down the list, like give 20 different things and still not hit, I'm sure, something that you guys think is out there that's great. And it's just like, before you go to a clinic or two and you take notes and you try to take one thing and like, man, now it's at the tip of your fingers. So I learned when it comes to building a coaching staff is, Coach Simpson touched on this last year, and it was before I listened, just something I picked up from his clinic before I was even in the position that I'm at. I was still an assistant assessor. But he said, hire people first. And that's, man, hitting the nail on the head. Find good people and they can learn football, especially in today's day and age. Like, the resources are out there. If they want to be a football coach and they're a good person, they can get it. And again, we're blessed in a unique situation that we have multiple guys that coach here for over 30 years, and we'll bend over backwards to help these young coaches because they still care about the program. But again, back to your question, something I think not only investing in myself and trying to be the best coach that I can be, but investing in our assistant coaches and helping them be the best coaches that they can be. And it's also a unique balance with which you'll find, and I'm sure Coach Simpson's had some experience on this. It's a unique balance of every coach is different in the amount of responsibility they can handle. Some coaches want a full plate, like they want it right off the bat, give me as much as I can have. Other coaches don't, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's your job as the head coach to really get to know your assistant coaches and like what are they looking for? Because if you put too much on a guy at once, he's going to get overwhelmed, and now you're going to have to repair something that you probably broke. Because again, back to our clinic, I know you talked about that book, Extreme Ownership. To me, like everything's my fault. It doesn't matter like what it is. Like it doesn't matter what it is. It's my fault. There's something that I could have done differently to have changed that situation. So just always reflecting on that. Obviously, young coaches, we're going to make mistakes. But that's really the biggest, I think, is just investing in your assistant coaches and building a staff with longevity. Again, I was blessed to see that firsthand when I played at the school that I was at.
I'm super glad you brought up extreme ownership, because that's like my mantra in life.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't even realize it is, but I have a coach that I've kind of taken under my wing, and I'm like, he's just a lay coach. He has been most years because he has a full-time job. And he calls himself the president of my fan club, which is hilarious. But he's the one that told me, he was like, when I talk to people, I tell them your mantra is extreme ownership. I was like, I guess it kind of is. When I'm talking youth, when I'm talking to young coaches, when I'm talking to students, players, that's the only book I want to talk about, extreme ownership, because everything's your fault. As you reach that head coach level, maybe your second or third year, Logan, you're probably there and if you haven't, need to read Dichotomy of Leadership.
Yep.
Because it is the follow-on, and it does teach you. My wife is the first one who brought this up, because I didn't read it for a long time. I didn't read the second one. And I was this extreme ownership. It's my fault. I'm a DC for the freshman team at the 5th largest school in Oklahoma, and I'm making everything my fault. And she was like, you can't be responsible for 100% of everything. It's just impossible. Like, that's bad. It's bad advice. So I finally read the second book, and it really does talk about that dichotomy it's called the dichotomy of leadership. I mean, but it just breaks those things down where you can learn that, like, yes, everything is my fault, but I'm still going to hold people accountable for the stuff they didn't get done.
Oh, yeah.
It gets overwhelmed.
Absolutely. I need to read that for sure.
Done,
Yeah.
but we're going to have that conversation too. And when that conversation is not going to be, hey, that was my fault. So
Right.
I love introducing people to that concept of extreme ownership. And as you progress and it gets that time, you do have to jump into the dichotomy and learn the balance, the gray area we talked about earlier.
Right.
And like, Kenny said, there's so many things you've got to learn how to just fit in the middle, and you can't jump on either side. So that's pretty good.
And I think to build on that, you mentioned taking ownership, but then when somebody does, you've got to have that conversation, back to coaching staff. And I'd love Coach Simpson's opinion on this as well. And back to leadership, it's our job to hear everybody's opinion, but then make a decision. And I think it's really important to be able to see in your assistant coaches who's okay with that and who isn't, because it's like, I'm going to hear you out. I'm going to hear your opinion, but then it is my job to make the decision that I think is best for this team. And that's something that I'm really trying to find the balance, because I don't want, a term is a yes man. I don't want a yes man. Like, I want your opinion. I want to learn. I don't want you to just be in the room. I don't know everything. But I think there's a very thin line of not being a yes man and being poison. Because if we're in that coach's office and we're having these discussions, again, I'm going to hear you out. I'm going to get your opinion. I'm going to think it all the way through, but then I'm going to make a decision. Now, if that decision that I make doesn't align with your opinion Are you okay with that? Or are you going to start stirring the pot behind the head coach's back and going against the head coach's decision because it's not what you agreed with?
Right.
That's when I think, and again, Coach Simpson's done this a long time, and I love his opinion. That's when, okay, is this a young guy in his 20s that we can kind of discuss this and work through and be like, hey, this isn't okay? Or is this a guy that's in his 40s and has coached for maybe 15, 20 years, and this is just him, and he's not going to get on board with what we're doing here? So again, Coach Simpson, I'd love your opinion on that topic.
Yeah, I'm going to start off with that, and then I'll go back to whatever Daniel's got. There's a couple things I try to keep in line with that. One is I call it the 80-20 rule. Like if a guy can do a job as well as you 80% of the time,
Yeah,
as 80% as good as you do, we're going to give that guy some freedom. Like there are some decisions that we don't have to argue about. Like this coach so-and-so is in charge of our uniform, and I trust him to do it, and he's going to tell us why he's doing it, and then we're going to do that. Like I don't honestly, because I don't really care. Like this is what he's going to do. Okay. And so there are a lot of times that you mentioned it, Coach, but there are a lot of times you can find opportunities to give coaches ownership. You mentioned how much you can put on their plate, but I look at it as opportunities for leadership. Like that we try to give every coach some field of leadership. That could be like specific to a position, of course. I'm talking more off the field. Like we have a coach who's responsible for, ordering our gear, but he also has to help do inventory. So you got a job that sucks and a job that's good. You got a coach that, hey, he's in charge of the weight room. Well, when we get extra money for the weight room, he gets to do that. But he's also the guy who's got to make sure it's taken care of. So there's lots of opportunities there you can find for guys to lead. And I think that bleeds over into kids too. And I will circle back to your answer, I promise. But I think there's a lot of times we can find opportunities and things that really don't matter to allow seniors to have a huge say in what we're doing. Like, what color gear are we going to get? Are we going to, in practice early this day? Are we going to do this activity? There's these three options you guys have. And then there's the other group you've got to get on your side. Like I call these the alphas. These are the guys that whether you want to admit it or not, they really lead the team. You don't really lead the team, they lead the team. So those guys, we're going to bring in and have a lot of conversation with them and give them a lot more leadership opportunities, whether it's specific kids I need you to go help me with, whether it's, hey, we're looking at doing these helmets this year instead of these helmets. Hey, we're looking at going to this team camp instead of that team camp. Hey, we're looking at, shortening practice on Tuesday and going longer on Wednesday, or we're looking at coming in the morning on this one, because whatever it is, well, those guys are going to have a big say in those things, because ultimately, let's be honest, those things don't matter. They don't matter in winning football games. But now those guys, coaches and players, feel they have a chance to lead. So that can alleviate 90% of the issues we get ourselves painted into a corner, where we feel like we have to have a group discussion on everything. And then as a coach, Logan, you're having to be the judge and jury of hearing two sides argue. So we can, if we can eliminate those things because it doesn't really matter, let's eliminate those issues and give these coaches a chance to kind of lead. Then you have to have the, are you a man or a boy conversation? And that's the conversation you were talking about. Like when we have to make a decision that you don't agree with, are you going to be a man about it and get mad for 10 minutes? And if we want to arm wrestle or whatever, we're cool. But when you leave, we're done. Are you going to be a boy, or are you going to go gossip like a little girl? What are you going to be in those moments? Because we can't have that. And those guys, there's no right, like you said, that's a tough position. It's not a tough position. The tough position is, you got to fire that guy and you don't want to. Like that's the hard part. Like we all know who the guy is in our program that's a poison. We all know. Do you have the ability, because your school may not give it to you, or do you have the courage to let that guy go? And so, or do you have the courage to realize you're the poison? Like That guy's trying to help you. You're the wrong guy. So there's those hard times, but a lot of times I really feel like we know the answer. Like we go home and we know the answer. We replay it in our head and we go, man, I was wrong about that. And are we man enough to admit that? Or we go home and we go, this guy's killing our program. I just hope I can turn a blind eye and maybe we can get by. I feel like you kind of know deep down that. Like I think and every now and then you're blindsided. I've been a young coach before and I've kind of had a blindside come. But even with that, I kind of knew that guy wasn't all in with what I needed, and I didn't have the courage to address it, and so that's kind of where I fall on that. But I do have a couple of little tips on your thing here. I think, Daniel, I love how Coach brought it up. Having an older coach like that, Coach, that speaks volumes, 1, to him, and 2, to you. Like, that guy's not sticking around for some guy who doesn't respect him and who isn't going to learn from him. Like, eventually that's going to be me. Like, I'm going to be that old guy helping whoever the coach is, as long as I respect that coach and I know that coach was what's best for our kids. So credit to him and you. And you brought it up. What can we learn this offseason? What can I get better at this offseason? I give clinics. I'm leaving tomorrow morning to go give a clinic. And so I have to carve out time for me to learn. Like, just because I'm giving a clinic, I mean, I know everything about everything. Of course not. I got to carve out time to get better at what we're not good at. Like, we weren't great with man-to-man, had to throw it plays. So I've spent a lot of time this offseason talking to a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me. And then what fits our system, what works. But the basic idea, though, is what can I get better at? And you got a guy who's a Hall of Fame coach trying to get better. So we can all do that. And then I put down this last one here. I think you need to make the kids' experience as good as possible. We went 10-2 this year. We had a great year, and they remember the wins. We got a banner. They remember all that stuff. First time we've ever done all these cool things. You know what else they remember the most? Going to St. Louis to that gun tea camp, Logan, that you came to, and staying overnight. We slept in a gym on the floor, and we took them to a Cardinal game. Half of them have never been to a professional game before. Half of them never left the state. They remember that more than they remember the games. And so I think sometimes as coaches, we forget that. Like we think winning or losing, that's the experience. No, not really. I mean, the stuff that you did between the summer and the end of the year, that's the experience. What are you doing? What events are you doing with your kids? How are you making the games fun? How are you making the camps fun? What are you doing in practice to be fun? Their stories are not going to be about winning and losing. They're going to be about hanging out with their friends, or when Coach Gould did something silly on our staff. That's what they're going to remember. So try to remember that. And that's one of my goals this year, is to continue to enjoy the ride. Last year I really thought was going to be my last year as head coach. And I really thought I'm going to come back and work for this coach. And our admin asked me to stick around for a couple more years. And I've got a guy I think is about ready to be a head coach, and I'm ready to go work for him when that time comes. But I lived that year like it was my last year. Everything was a fun event. I was trying to soak up the moments. And, man, that was my favorite year because I thought it might be my last. And I think this year I hope I can do the same thing. Can I soak up the moments? Can we do the fun things? Can we try to enjoy it? Because a lot of times when you're 29, when I was 29, 10 years goes by and, man, you don't ever stop and enjoy. It's always about getting better. It's always about this. And there's nothing wrong with being driven. But, man, you're just kind of driving your life away. Like, when are you taking time to really enjoy what you've been blessed with? And I think that's the one thing that I wish younger coaches, mainly me when I was younger, had known. Because then you get older, you start to somewhat enjoy it, and then it's gone. And I wish that younger coaches would kind of, man, it's okay to stop and enjoy it. It's okay to celebrate wins, because winning is freaking hard. Like, I don't care if you're 10-0, all 10 wins were hard, and you need to enjoy them. And I think sometimes we've kind of put a stigma on, we expect it.
Yeah.
Well, come on now. Enjoy what you're doing,
Absolutely. I appreciate that piece of advice. It's I need to stop and smell the roses a little bit more, that's for sure.
Well, we're going to move into our last part here, what not to do as a coach. So, Coach Simpson, this is your time to shine here, man. What's our
I
lesson?
feel like you've been letting me get off on tangents all night tonight, but so my last one I'll get on here. The lesson as a
It's
coach
your
is
podcast,
this:
man.
because usually with Daniel, you're on here. You're going to be a head coach soon. Logan's come on here, and I've come on, and we've talked about we were not ready as a head coach. Well, newsflash for everybody on the planet: you're never going to be ready to be a head coach until you are a head coach. So if you're sitting here listening, going, "My goodness, they've scared the crap out of me. I don't want to be a head coach." That's not the point of this. Like the point of this is you don't know what you don't know till you do it. So go ahead and take the plunge. Like I hear all coach, well, coach, how do I know when I'm ready? Well, man, are you willing to work? Are you willing to learn? Then do it. But you're not ready. I don't care if you're 35 like Daniel. I don't care if you're 29 like Logan. I don't care if you're 57. Until you've been a head coach, you're never going to be ready. Like you're never going to be ready. So go ahead and jump out there, but be willing to learn as you go. I think that's the big takeaway from me when I talk to a lot of coaches, because they all come ask me, when will they know? Man, I don't know if you ever know. Like I don't know if you ever know that you're ready, and I don't think you ever are ready. I just think you know that you're wanting the opportunity and you're going to do the best you can with it. And I think that's really all we can say.
Yeah.
Good spot. Good point there, Coach. Last thing I want to mention, just make sure you jump over and check out procomwelchman.com. Let Zach get a chance to speak to you about Procom. If you're trying to upgrade headsets, maybe you're only a couple of years into yours and you're tired of paying those high refurbished fees. I think that's something Procom does pretty well. Is they're cheaper when you send them in to get them all refreshed. If you need a loudmouth, whatever it is you need, he can hook you up. Once again, he's not. He talks all the time. He's not a timer guy, right? Procom doesn't build timer. They build headsets. They want to help you communicate. So if you're looking for that type of thing, procomwelchman.com. And if you're looking for a fundraiser, you've got a place where it's hard to get that money, right? And you're tired of selling knickknacks, because please stop selling knickknacks. People don't want extra junk in their house. They want to support your program. Okay. Reach out to Mark or Ryan or whoever. You can start with Mark if that's what you need to do. Call those guys over at Ace Sports and let them help you get an amazing video board in your stadium, and you can use that for advertisements for years. What year are you on, Kenny? 7?
Yeah, we're on 7. I'm gonna give you a real quick story, Zach Welchman story too. Then I'll kind of give Mark a little plug here. So Zach was a coach for me. Zach Welchman, guy who's selling headsets now. Now he's gotten smart and he realized you can make more money selling headsets. Zach came to me one time. We weren't very good. We were just starting to get good. So we had one good DB, and that DB drove him nuts. Like he would always just pester him and just do different things to drive Zach nuts. So he said, "Coach, I can't work with him." And I said, "Well, Zach, we got one DB, and I can go find a DB coach in about 5 minutes. So you need to figure out how you're going to work with this guy, because he's what we got." So that's my Zach Welchman story. And guys, if you are looking for headsets, we use Procom. We love them. Zach Welchman is a great guy of integrity. He'll tell you if you need things or don't need them. He's a good one to go to. And then Mark, you talking about him on our video board. We're on year 7 with our video board. We're about to run our second campaign. So think about this one. This is a real story. We got the video board. It cost us $250,000. We raised over 400. Mark helped a little bit with that. We helped with that. So I don't know if you can do math real well, but that's plus 150. Okay. We put that money towards our weight room and some other things. Those commitments were 5-year commitments. So we're on year 7, which means those 5-year commitments are up. So we're going to use the same board and do another 5-year commitment. So do your math now at 400 plus 400 and start looking at how you can actually make money on a video board. And Mark will do a good job helping you with that.
Perfect. And I love telling people, I kind of overheard different numbers for y'all's stadium there, Kenny, but that's pretty much spot on with what I heard. Look, when you're going $500,000 in the black in year 6 of any fundraiser, I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter what the cost of that fundraiser is. Right. You go be $600,000 in the black today, tomorrow. So, reach out to Mark or Ryan. Reach out to us if you just want to email me and talk about it and see what we think before you call the man. That's fine. We'd love to help you out. Enough about the ads. Coach, I saw you got some new books, playbook stuff about to come out. What was it you're putting out now? Is it O-line book?
Yep. So I'm working on a quarterback manual. So if you're listening to this, it's probably not out yet. I'm on page like 94 of 150 some odd. So I'm almost through the reads and I'm getting into the drills. But we do have a gun T QB manual coming out. We wanted to pair that up because we have the reps, that VR machine we're now using. So if you're teaching the gun T, you want to teach the RPO, we just put our kid through it this morning. It was pretty cool to watch him go through all of it, sitting with his, Crocs on, with a VR deal on, and he's learning all our reads. And so
playing quarterback.
Yeah, playing
for the
quarterback like
Southside
he's playing
Southerners,
Madden
his
or whatever
Crocs.
he's doing there. But it was really neat for him, and he really could tell he got better just from the time he put it on till he got done. That's over at Reps VR. You can just message me. But those two things are coming out, and then I've got another book that'll be coming out very, very soon. It's called Football Toolbox, and it's a play caller's guide. And so it's going to be one of my, I call them real books. Like those books take me probably a couple of years to finish. I just finished this one. Jamie's doing the cover, so be on the lookout. It's coming.
Hey, we could plug Jamie too. She does amazing work. I think she did Prairie Groves recently. Is she the one that did Prairie Groves?
Basically, if anybody has a good graphic on Twitter, social media guide, probably Jamie did it. And so that's over.
They're pretty
You
good,
just email me and I'll get you in touch with her.
Line Coach Academy coming soon, right?
That's right. That's coming out in April. So we got a bunch of stuff coming out. Probably around April. It's all going to hit the fan. I don't know what the word is for that. That's good. But Line Academy is going to be sweet.
That's right.
We've got some dudes. Like I've reached out to guys and I was like, there's no way this guy's going to say yes. And then he said yes. And then we went, okay, we're not just going to go big names. Let me find a 2A coach who's had to work with 150-pound linemen because that guy can teach. So we got 2 or 3 of those guys in there. So I think it's going to be a really great course for any O-line coach because we're going to, obviously have different intricacies, but by bringing all those guys in, I think it's going to be a really cool deal.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, guys. Social media real quick. Logan, if somebody wants to reach out to you and talk about how to go 0-9, where would they reach out to you at?
I've got really good advice on how to go 0-9. My Twitter handle, I think, is @CoachSpainDQ, or you can just search Logan Spain. I think I'm the only Logan Spain out there.
There you go. Awesome. You can find me on Twitter /X @CoachChamboOK. Email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. I feel like there's other ways, but I'm forgetting them. It's 10:30 at night or something.
Yeah.
We pulled a late one tonight.
Bedtime.
And then Coach Simpson's @FBCoachSimpson on Twitter and X. FBCoachSimpson@gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of him if you have any questions. Podcast @Coaching101pod. We're slowly trying to get some more videos and stuff out there and clip up the podcast. It is a crazy time of year with everything going on. So if it's slow, hang out for a little while. It's like Oklahoma weather. It'll change about 15 minutes. I want to thank you for being a listener of the Coaching 101 podcast. We'll hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. Coach Spain, man, absolutely loved having you on. Appreciate it. It's great to, a lot of times we do get the older coaches, the guys with a ton of experience, because that's who you generally want. But man, it is refreshing to get a guy that has new perspective. But it already seems like you're wise beyond your years in coaching and in age. You've kind of got it figured out, it seems. Not just because your record, but because the way you speak and carry yourself. Even when we talked at the clinic, I was like, all right, that's a dude that's got it. So kudos to you for figuring out whatever you have right now. Continue up that path, that mountain we talked about having to climb after you fall off the cliff of stupidity, because we've all been there. So man, excellent job with what you're doing, and just keep being real. Keep being real like that for your guys, because that's what they need.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I greatly appreciate you having me on the podcast, getting to talk to you guys. I really enjoyed it.
Well, Coach, if you're going to Coach going to whip us in St. Louis, you were going to be at the St. Louis. Are you coming to St. Louis again for the camp? The guy around St. Louis,
I'll be at St. Louis in July.
The real expert of the gun tee is Logan Spain, is what people don't know. So if you come out to St. Louis, they will put it on you at that camp. So
there
you go. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.